So, well, hello everyone. Welcome. I'll begin with some slow housekeeping as folks trickle in here. Welcome to our first member workshop of the 2025-26 academic year. It's so great to see so many people here for our first workshop. And we're very excited about today's workshop on constructive disagreement using a really cool AI tool, Sway, developed by our hosts today, Simon and Nick, who they actually kicked off last year's workshop series and our whole faculty member workshop series last year. So we're excited to have them back and excited to have them lead you through actually using this tool and seeing how you can integrate it into your classrooms this fall. Before I hand everything over to Simon and Nick to do the actual workshop, I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping here for HXA. For those of you who don't know me, I am Nicole Barbero, and I'm the Director of Communications, Marketing, and Events here. And I also have my colleague Marisa Hart here, who runs all of our events and organizes our workshops. And again, it's so great to see so many. We have, I think, over 50 people here now for the workshop today. So it's a really great turnout for all of you. And today, I just wanted to mention a few things. As I said, this is the kickoff of our member workshops for the fall semester here. And we also have next month's workshop already scheduled, and Marisa will drop a link in the chat. Next month, we are collaborating with our friends over at FIRE to do a workshop on faculty speech rights and encouraging free expression in the classroom. So registration for that one is now open if you'd like to register here, or you'll get many emails from me reminding you to register. Also, we have our regional conferences. This is a new thing that we're doing, kicking off next week in Colorado at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. So if you're in the general area, registration for that is still open. And then we are also going over to the Mid-Atlantic region next month in September for our regional conference there, hosted at the University of Maryland. So registration for that one will be open as well. So if you're in any of those areas and like to connect with Heterodox Academy members and various campus communities in the region, we encourage you to come to those events as well. And finally, Heterodox Academy is always stronger with more members. So as you return to campuses this fall, please do encourage any of your colleagues to join us and become a member of Heterodox Academy. So with that, I will turn over things to Simon and Nick. And as I mentioned, they kicked off our workshop series last year, sharing their really innovative product called Sway. Simon Cullen, he is a faculty research fellow at our HXA Siegel Center for Academic Pluralism. He's starting officially on September 1st, so we're really happy to have him back this year in a more official capacity with HXA. He's also a visiting research professor of civil discourse and artificial intelligence in the School of Civic Life and Leadership at UNC Chapel Hill. He developed the award-winning Dangerous Ideas in Science and Society course, which he also won one of our Open Inquiry Awards for. Which helps students explore diverse viewpoints on polarizing topics by teaching them the art of constructive disagreement. And with him today is Nick DiBella, who is an intelligence community postdoctoral research fellow based in the Department of Philosophy at Carnegie Mellon University. And his research focuses on developing methods to improve reasoning and communication in contexts involving uncertainty. Together, Simon and Nick have co-created Sway. And with that, I will hand it over to them to introduce you to this product, which you get to play with a little bit today as well. Simon, Nick.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Simon Cullen, and my research uses tools from philosophy, cognitive science, and educational technology to improve how people reason and communicate, especially across moral and political divides.
Hi, so happy to be here. I'm Nick, and as Nicole mentioned, my work is primarily in probability and philosophy, and this is a context disagreement about controversial issues where uncertainty abounds, or rather it should abound, and my work focuses on a lot of that, how we manage uncertainty in these kinds of controversial contexts.
So today we're excited to introduce you to Sway, our chat platform that harnesses AI to help students have better conversations with each other across lines of difference. It's supported generously by the Arthur Vining Davis Foundations, among other funders, and that means we can make it available for free to all educators and students. We developed Sway to embody the principles of open inquiry and constructive disagreement.
That's right. And we're so happy now to be officially partnering with HXA. In fact, it was nearly a year ago today that we introduced Sway to the world. As Nicole mentioned, this was at the inaugural HXA virtual workshop. Since then, Over 2,000 college students have used Sway to help them talk about all sorts of controversial topics, and we'll get to all of that in just a bit. And we're so excited to share what we've learned from these discussions. We'll also share how instructors have put Sway to work and how Sway can be used for other activities. But first, let's just briefly go over the plan for today. We'll start by giving some background, how Sway originated from our research and teaching. And second, we'll explain what is Sway. So some of you already know about Sway, and some of you, I think, have actually started to use Sway. But we'll explain what Sway is, what it does, and why we love it. And after that, we'll share some of the student data that we've collected over the past year. A year ago, we didn't have the student data. Now we've got a lot of student data that we can share. And then after that, we're going to let all of you play with Sway. So we'll put you into breakout rooms, and you'll all connect with each other and talk about things that you disagree about. And that's coming up. And at the end, we will end with some next steps, and we'll have an extended Q&A.
Awesome.
At school.
So before students took my class, Dangerous Ideas,
When my parents sent me to CMU,
I used to survey them to try and understand their experiences of the speech climate at CMU. And I wanted to share just a few examples of what they told me.
At school, I knew that I shouldn't ever try to talk about controversial topics.
when my parents sent me to CMU, they told me to stay silent about controversial topics.
I don't support certain liberal ideologies, but I cannot and will not ever let anyone except for my closest friends know that.
Many students, no matter their political leanings, seem to have concluded that the potential benefits of discussing controversial topics in class are far outweighed by the potential risks. And sadly, very few students report having found spaces outside of class where they can openly discuss many important controversial topics. Instead, they are much more likely to report experiences like this student.
When I was talking to my boyfriend about affirmative action and racism, I stated a different view just to play with the idea and try to understand it. He attacked me and said he couldn't even respond or try to explain it to me without being super upset.
To which I say, dump him. You need an intellectual peer. So the anonymous pre-semester survey showed that students really were craving a space to have these kinds of discussions. And that is what Dangerous Ideas in Science and Society tried to offer. It was designed to engage students in intellectually serious discussions of challenging topics, including various moral, social, and political issues. We started, just to give you a sample, talking about what the actual threats to free speech are on campus, looking at genetic enhancement and whether it's permissible, whether or not it's ever permitted to kill a fetus, and if so, under what circumstances, whether doctors can let terminally ill patients die, whether or not you have a right to own a gun, whether or not it is possible to transition from your ancestral race, and finally, whether if God exists, why is there so much suffering? And if he doesn't, what's the point of anything? So I have had to cut from the syllabus many topics that I love to cover in order to include these sorts of things. And the reason I do it is because when I ask students about their experience of the speech culture, they say things like the quotes I just showed you. At the end of the class, they were saying very different things.
It meant a lot to me to have an environment where I could be honest instead of evasive, straightforwardly disagree with someone, and still be able to talk to them outside of class without fear of retaliation.
This kind of experience and opportunity has a really deep effect on students.
This has been most likely the only class that has changed the way I will go about my life now that it's over.
The downside of Dangerous Ideas, the thing that Nick and I were reflecting on when we started to think about Sway at the very beginning, is what an enormous amount of resources it required. 15 people were working with me the last time I taught it, including teaching assistants that I had to train. And that was just to teach 200 students. So a very common question that I would get after presenting on Dangerous Ideas and the remarkable transformative results that we found was, well, how can it work at scale?
That's right. We asked ourselves, can we take the lessons learned from Simon's course and replicate or even enhance the student experience at a massive scale? And one possibility is, well, let's take an amazing teacher like Simon Cullen, produce 10,000 clones of him and put them all around the country. Unfortunately, that's not biologically feasible or medically or ethically. But we thought the next best solution was to use AI. And that's what Sway is. Sway is our AI solution to this. So Sway is not an AI assistant or a chatbot. It's actually a messaging platform like iMessage or WhatsApp, except that first of all, it only matches you with people you disagree with certain exceptions we'll get into. And second, it adds AI guidance to every chat. Yes, there we go. So first, Sway helps students with their language before messages are sent. So suppose a student tries to send a message that's inflammatory, but still attempts to convey some idea worth discussing. Sway automatically detects this and suggests a charitable rephrasing of that message. And this rephrasing will try to capture the content and even the emotional tenor of the original, but in a more constructive way. And you'll see that in action in just a bit. The second way Sway supports constructive disagreement is through what we consider to be the real star of the show, Guide. Guide is Sway's AI discussion facilitator. It's an active part of every Sway chat that contributes in much the same way that an experienced teacher would. Guide's there to help students clarify arguments, pose thoughtful questions that deepen the discussion, and make sure that everyone's voice is heard. We've also done a huge amount of work to design Guide to be as neutral and unbiased as possible. And to date, we've hosted around 1,000 student discussions on Sway, and so far, knock on wood, we can count on a single hand how many times we've received a complaint that Guide has been unfair or biased. Guide's also non-human, so it remembers everything, has infinite stamina, and I think really has an enviable level of calm and level-headedness.
So Sway is not a free speech platform. We prefer to say it's a free inquiry platform. And the reason for that is there are a lot of things that you could say to a person that would undermine the very possibility of having a constructive disagreement with them. That would include things like slurs, there we go, mere insults or mere personal attacks. Those are insults and personal attacks that don't even attempt to further the discussion. You would be familiar with them from social media. So all of those messages are simply blocked. If saying something would undermine the very goal of a Sway discussion, which we regard as understanding and engaging deeply with a different viewpoint, then that is irredeemably unconstructive speech, and we block it for that reason.
That's right. So the goal of our research with Sway is to create environments where even highly controversial topics can be discussed and debated, but with guardrails that promote understanding and, crucially, rationality rather than hostility and polarization. It's a very delicate balance that, until recently, only highly skilled humans could manage.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the app. Suppose you wanted to give your students a discussion assignment on the topic of Israel-Palestine. So when you create the assignment on Sway, you'll configure some topic statements. And then when students begin the assignment by logging in, the first thing Sway will do is survey them about their opinions on the topic statements. So for the sake of demonstrating the app, I'm going to strongly disagree with the statement, and I'll have Nick strongly agree with the statement. Now, here's the first feature Nick mentioned, the charitable rephraser. So here you can see an unconstructive message being written there. Maybe if the Palestinians stopped attacking innocent Israelis, there could finally be peace. Ever think of that? And you can see there a passive aggressive emoji. Well, Sway has provided a rephrasing. Oh, goodness me. Okay, my slide's a little broken there. But what you could see a moment ago was Sway providing a charitable rephrasing that aimed to capture the meaning, the underlying thing that ought to be worth discussing, but without the needless invective or passive aggressive emojis. The second that Nick mentioned is Guide. So in this little snippet here, you can see in the discussion, I've just asked Nick, how can you ignore that Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people? And Nick has said we need some historical context. At this point, Guide has now jumped in to say, it's good to see you both engaging with each other's points, but let's dig a bit deeper. Simon, can you explain what you believe gives Israel a stronger claim to the land, particularly in light of the 1948 history? Now, this is Guide, as you can see, coming in by itself. Oh, excuse me. Coming in by itself, but users can also call Guide by sending a message that begins with, hey, Guide. So you're going to see that happen right now. You can see, I asked, Guide, can you give us some info on Jewish history in the region? And you can see here, Guide has provided some bullet points going back to about 1000 BCE.
That's right. So you'll see when you play with Sway soon that there's a lot more that Guide can do. There's also a lot that Guide doesn't do that we designed Guide not to do. So Guide will not think for you. Guide will not think for the students. Guide's there to encourage their own thinking, to help them develop their views, to help them understand each other's reasoning. And relatedly, Guide doesn't take a stand on contested issues. So if you ask Guide, for example, should we be letting more immigrants in, fewer immigrants in? Guide is not going to take a stand on that for all manner of controversial topics. So Guide, again, will encourage students to think on their own. Guide will ask them questions. Guide will challenge their assumptions. Guide will try to get them to understand what their assumptions were. A lot of times students don't know what their assumptions are until they're pressed. And one of the main things that Guide does is to press students and get them to see what their assumptions might have been. Another important thing is that Guide doesn't let students coast or disengage. So we've designed Sway to be such that if you are an instructor configuring a discussion assignment for your students, it's going to require equal participation from all the students. So typically, it's a one-on-one chat. One student talking to another student, they both disagree with each other. And we've designed it to be the case that the discussion will not complete until both students have contributed a certain amount. So no free riding here.
Now, when we began testing Sway, we didn't start off with students. We started off with empirical studies, where we recruited regular folks off the internet to have discussions about topics like January 6th and the 2020 election, trans athletes in women's sports, and the Israel-Palestine conflict, and other issues like that. And what we saw in those studies was that, surprisingly, discussing today's most toxic and polarizing issues on Sway could actually open people's minds and maybe even make them hate each other a little bit less. Rather than sharing feedback from those participants, although they did give us amazing feedback, I'll just show you some of the pre- and post-test results. So both before and after the AI-facilitated human-to-human discussion, participants rated how strongly they agreed or disagreed with a series of statements that are designed to measure their openness to opposing viewpoints. And you can see those statements collected here on the left side of the screen. So the scale includes things like people who disagree with me about whatever topic have well thought out reasons for their views. That's a critical first step, because recognizing that the opposition has reasons means that they might not think what they do simply because they are stupid or deranged. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen there that about 2/3 of participants, after just a 30-minute discussion, are showing improvements on this scale. And in fact, the improvement is meaningfully large at about 0.3 standard deviations. And again, that's just after one 30-minute discussion. We expect these effects to deepen and to become more ingrained after repeated discussions on Sway. And that's something we're actually testing in our randomized control trial this year. Now, there's a number of ways you can use Sway. Instructors can use it to give students guided discussion assignments. You get to set the time, around 30 minutes seems to work pretty well. They can be asynchronous if the students prefer to send messages when they have a chance, or synchronous. Event organizers can also use Sway to allow participants to continue the conversation post-event. And that's one thing we've done with the MIT Free Speech Alliance and with the Australia Dialogues. Campus leaders can use Sway in orientation activities to get students off to the best possible start to their college careers, namely having a deep conversation with someone who holds an opposing viewpoint. Now, the very first data we collected, our pilot study, our guinea pig as it were, was from Professor Abigail Segui's Sociology of Gender course. Now, Heterodox Academy members might recognize that name. Abigail Segui won the Open Inquiry Award for teaching this year. Her students have discussed everything from trans women's participation in women's sports and the medicalization of gender dysphoria of gender non-conforming children, to whether it's Islamophobic to oppose mandatory hijab laws or female genital mutilation. So those are about the most potentially toxic subjects that you could assign. So how did it go? Well, over 80% of students rated their chats as awesome or good, which is the first sign something is working. And also the first sign that this is actually comparable to some of my best teaching assistants. It's exceedingly rare for even the best of them to deliver results this reliably. replicating one of the most important and surprising results from Dangerous Ideas, students were able to discuss all of these topics with opponents, and they felt respected, despite the potentially divisive disagreement. Also replicating Dangerous Ideas.
Oh,
yes, Nick.
yeah, I'll jump in a bit here. So every time a student sends a message, we classify it into different categories. The broad categories are whether the message is productive or counterproductive. Now, you might have thought that when students discuss controversial topics related to gender or Israel-Palestine or any one of the many controversial political topics, that there would be a lot of counterproductive messages. In fact, this is probably what a lot of people in higher ed think would be the standard case, that students just struggle to have these conversations. They're not going to be productive, but that's not at all what we see. So out of more than 40,000 student messages sent over the past year, only half of a percent of them were classified as potentially counterproductive. And some of them weren't even actually counterproductive. We try to be pretty conservative with that. So we're very delighted to see this.
Yeah, I think one of these findings really showed us that, at least in Sway chats, the students are nothing like what you would expect on the basis of what you see on social media. So given all of that, unsurprisingly, over 90% of students report not being offended by their partner's opposing view, which is great. Nearly all of them say they enjoyed the discussion, that they managed to keep things respectful, and yeah, like you can see, they don't seem to be offended. One of the most important findings for us, over 90% of students report feeling comfortable sharing their honest opinions with their partners. Just to make the significance of that clear, here are the results from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression's national survey of 58,000 students. And there you can see under 50% of students say they feel comfortable talking about a generic, controversial topic. Finally, like in Dangerous Ideas, Sway is designed to promote intellectual humility and rationality. And as early evidence of what's possible, we found that 2/3 of students are surprised to discover that their partners had better reasons than expected. And quite amazingly, we find that 50% of students indicate changing their minds about something related to the topic. And here you can see the distribution of opinions, the distance between the opinions, how they change before and after. 8 in 10 students value the opportunity to engage with an opposing viewpoint. It's not merely that they're not offended, they actively value it. They say their partners are genuinely trying to understand their perspective. And given all of this, you won't be surprised to learn that they say the discussion improved their perception of their partner. Now, the students are overwhelmingly crediting Guide with improving the discussion. Originally, it was unclear that Guide would be possible given current LLMs, but these data show that it really is. So, Nick.
That's right. So the data that Simon was just showing was from our very first course that used it, Abigail Segui's UCLA course. And since then, we've had a bunch of other schools use it as well. So here's a list of this. Isn't a comprehensive list, but you'll see Sway's been used everywhere from technical colleges to community colleges, state universities, liberal arts colleges, Ivies, basically every type of post-secondary institution. And this is really important to us because we want to make constructive disagreement available to all students. You can't just learn this skill by reading a book. You got to practice. You got to get the reps in. And it's so important for people to have this practice. But unfortunately, currently, we're trying to change this, but currently it's not very easy for students to get this practice.
So let's take a look at some of the feedback we've received from students who chatted on Sway over the last year.
This is a great tool. It will get people to open up in ways that they wouldn't otherwise in a regular classroom setting.
I love the AI guide and how it helped move the conversation along and encourage critical thinking from both of us.
The discussion turned out to be very rich, in-depth, and of high quality. I think that's exactly what Sway expects from its users.
It was actually so cool. I loved the AI guide. And the quiz at the end made me feel heard.
Oh, actually,
I don't even like homework or school, to be honest, but having to articulate your argument and then do a quiz on the debate after is cool.
Sorry,
yeah,
Nick.
Can you pause it for a second? I realized I think we forgot to mention the understanding quiz. So at the end of every Sway chat, each student has an understanding quiz about the other student. And this quiz will ask them not just what were the other student's views, but what their reasoning was, how they thought in a nuanced way about the view, how they responded to your objections. So we're really putting a premium on understanding and rationality and logic here, really promoting students' intellectual critical thinking skills in order to enable them to have these difficult discussions. So every single Sway chat ends with an understanding quiz, and that's something that just never would have been possible a few years ago. Or, I mean, really even 2 years ago. And it's just a wonderful way of assessing students that it's a completely new form of assessment, really.
Yeah. And then I'll just give one last feedback. This one is so recent, we haven't actually made a voice for it. This is the best use case for AI I've seen in the classroom. It adds something and facilitates independent thought and productive discussion. Unlike ChatGPT, it doesn't substitute for thinking and interaction, it facilitates them. Well, that one just warmed the cockles of my heart. You can find much, much more feedback from students who've used Sway on our website. You can see we've organized it into a few different categories, and Nick and I would love it if you went and had a look at what students are saying. We also share anonymous data from across institutions on our student data page. These students have discussed a number of very contentious topics, as you saw, including sex and gender identity, but also racism, tariffs, immigration, abortion, guns, addiction, homelessness, medical paternalism, among many, many others.
God.
Now, the very last thing I want to say here is we made a design decision early on in thinking about Sway, which was that the professor, the instructor, was not going to be allowed to actually read the transcript. So the students have a chat and it's completely private. Only they can read it, or if they opt into being a research participant, if they volunteer, then we can see de-identified versions of it. But the instructors themselves do not get to read the chats. And we think that's really important because of the problems of self-censorship and because the students know and fear that the instructors can punish them if they have unwelcome views. So what we've been showing you now, I hope, sounds very little like what you've been hearing about AI lately. Educators have been reporting seeing students using ChatGPT to cheat, to avoid writing their papers. They say students are only engaging in a surface level way, that they're not thinking deeply. And instructors are now worrying that students' skills might be atrophying because of over-reliance on AI.
That's right. We've actually designed Sway, and specifically Guide, to be very intellectually demanding. We've tried to make these discussions demanding. In fact, it'll be generally more demanding on students than a traditional in-person discussion section, where normally a student, I mean, maybe in a discussion section of 20 students or something, any particular student, a typical student might talk for maybe a few minutes, maybe just 30 seconds. But in these Sway chats, one-on-one discussions are happening where they're both talking to each other, guides being demanding of both of them, and they're talking typically, the most common time that these students talk is about 30 minutes. So continuous engagement is required, no sitting back while others talk, and we're constantly trying to get the students to clarify their reasoning and build the skill of constructive disagreement through this structured practice. And we're trying to measure real understanding as well with these understanding quizzes that we showed you, that we talked about.
We'll get to see all of that in a moment when we get to the demo. So this year we have over 200 instructors from over 200 institutions signed up to use Sway with their students, around 20,000 of them. As I mentioned, we've got multiple funders providing support for Sway, making it free for everyone in education. And we've been forming really fantastic partnerships. One that I can't resist calling out here is Dr. Barbara Oakley's new course on Coursera, Speak Freely, Think Critically, the Free Speech Balance Act. There are over 10,000 courses, college courses on Coursera today, and there is only one which directly attacks this topic. So we're really excited about the existence of this course, but even more excited that it deeply integrates Sway. So the students who take this MOOC not only get to watch terrific videos and read terrific articles, they also get to actually get the reps in and practice engaging across difference. Another partnership that I'd love to call out is with the Australia Dialogues, who are bringing civil discourse initiatives to my home country, Australia, and hopefully also trying to improve the speech culture for Australian students. We're also working with the Committee for Academic Freedom in the UK, and we're thrilled to work with the MIT Free Speech Alliance, where we've helped participants continue the debate after the MIT Free Speech events. Well, I think it is now time, Nick, that we should let everyone play with Sway. So here's the URL. If you visit this URL, you should be able to create an account. And then I think Marissa's going to put you into breakout rooms. The point of putting you into breakout rooms is not really so that you can chat with the people in your breakout rooms. Rather, you're going to connect with someone else when you log into Sway, but you can share your experiences with the person in your breakout rooms. They'll also be talking to someone else.
That's right. And just let me just make a note. Some of you might have already created Sway accounts. Maybe you're already an instructor using Sway. If you are such a person, if you've ever gotten an email from us with account details, we just ask that you use a personal email instead of your institutional email when you register right now. Because your previous email was an instructor account. This is effectively simulating the student experience.
Okay.
Can you show the email address again? Can you show the address again?
Oh yes, sorry.
It's also in the the Zoom chat. Marissa just shared this a minute ago.
And Marissa, whenever you're ready, I think we can start the breakout rooms.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start those now.
You will need to confirm your account. Once you register, you'll get an email asking you to confirm it, and then you'll be able to log in with your account credentials. And you'll also be asked whether you're a student or not. You can say either yes or no. If you say yes, you'll see what the student
no, just say no to skip all of the onboarding.
It'll take some time. It'll take an extra minute to do that.
You can see the privacy and consent document on our website, so you don't need to read it now. Just go have a chat and see how this works. We still want to give you a deep insight into not just the distribution of your students' opinions, but also the reasons that they provide for them and how they think about them. So you can see here a sample. This is a report that we send to the instructor after the discussions have concluded. And you can see here the topics the instructor has assigned. There's a 35-minute chat. This is the initial distribution of opinions. So when we survey the students, we get to tell you that. I'll skip that and come back to it. You get an overview of every single chat that your students had. It's just a sort of 1-minute read that tells you where they started off, how they reasoned, and usually gives you an example of how Guide performed. But as you can see here, there's 120 students and relatively few instructors are going to read all of that. So we can also synthesize all of those overviews to try and look for themes that emerge from the students' discussions across the class. And this means we can show you the sorts of considerations that students were moved by. We can show you where they were able to discover common ground, where they persistently disagreed, and we can try and provide any lessons or suggestions for what you might cover in the next assignment. Okay, so let's...
one more thing. So also at the conclusion of each Sway discussion assignment, you'll get a spreadsheet indicating which of your students completed the assignment, who didn't complete it. If they didn't complete it, what percentage completion did they arrive at? You can also see whether one student abandoned their chat partner. So we actually have a system for addressing this, which we're happy to talk about later. But I think there are a lot of other questions people have. But you'll get basically a spreadsheet that'll enable you to assign credit for Sway discussion assignments.
So that'll show you the percentage completion and the score on the understanding quiz. We also can show you how students' opinions changed from before to the end of the discussion. Here you can see a really big shift away from respect for female genital mutilation. And then we show you the survey data from your students' responses to our post-chat survey questions. Okay, cool. So let's open it up for Q&A. Rebecca, I see you've got a hand up. I see a question from Deb while Rebecca's possibly working on her mic.
Oh,
so Deb
sorry. That was my bad. Sorry. I was actually interested in hearing about what happens if you're abandoned by a conversation partner, because that's what happened to me. I never even got to the survey or the quiz because my partner just stopped interacting.
Nick, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so in this case, what we do is shortly before the assignment deadline that you, the instructor, set, if a student's chat partner has consistently been abandoning them, and by the way, we send multiple reminders to the students if they're being unresponsive, and if they continue to be unresponsive, then we we pair up the diligent student just with guide. And so the student just then has a conversation with guide about the topic. And the student who abandoned the diligent student then gets suspended. And
yeah, so I'll just say about the suspension, it's just a little bit of friction. So we send the student an email and say, we don't know exactly what happened, but it looks like you might have abandoned your partner. You just need to contact your instructor to get them to reactivate the account. And for the instructor, it's just click one button. The only reason that's there is just to insert a tiny bit of friction. And it turns out that's enough. Just knowing that you have to write to your instructor, that's enough to mean that the abandonment goes way, way, way down. So it's quite uncommon now. Okay, well now
so the guide didn't like do that with me.
No.
The guide kept prompting my partner like,
yeah, it will try and keep it will try and wait quite a long time to see if it can establish discussion. But if the deadline is coming up, then we'll give up.
And what all of you just did was not officially an assignment. It was what we call event mode or quick match. So it was we didn't put deadlines for that into this, but normally for a student discussion assignment, there'll be deadlines.
Yeah, so Deb asked, are these the only topics that can work with Sway, or can we create new topics? The topics are completely up to you. The instructor gets to decide, and that means you can use Sway really in any discipline on any topic.
That's right. I want to share a link that I sent to Lindsay, how instructors can set up assignments. It'll show you, it'll walk through how it works.
Okay, Quinton asks, do you consider male genital mutilation? I'm going to take Guide's approach there and ask Quinton for his thoughts on male genital mutilation. Okay, Daniel Clark asks...
I'm against it.
Against it, okay, good.
This is one of the topics that that Abigail from UCLA, Sociology of Gender, assigned for their students. We had a lot of discussions about circumcision in last fall.
So Daniel asks, can students complete the assignment asynchronously? The answer is yes. At the beginning of the assignment, Guide will start off by getting the students to coordinate on how they want to complete the assignment. And one option is asynchronously, in which case they have to promise that they're going to check reliably and respond quickly.
Nice.
Okay.
In fact, most instructors set it up asynchronously. Not all do, but a lot of them do.
Lindsay has her hand up.
Yeah, a couple things. I also didn't have a partner. There was never anybody in there, even though it said that there was a person there. And so I couldn't really use it. But my other question is, I think consistent with some on the comments, is how do you grade this? Like, is it anonymous, or does it like what level are we measuring what level of participation they're engaging in?
Yeah. So at the conclusion of the assignment, you not only get that instructor report that I was showing just a moment ago, you also get a spreadsheet, and that shows you by the students' registered email addresses, which will correspond to the email addresses on your roster and on your LMS. It shows you for each student the percentage that they completed up to the minimum. You set the minimum deadline, so 30 minutes. It'll show you how much they completed. It'll also show you the score on the understanding quiz. It will show you when they sent the first message, so you'll know if they left it really late and when they sent the last message. And that is the sort of information that you can use to assign credit. Most of our instructors make Sway Chat sort of a pass, not pass type of thing. So that hopefully answers it. Great. Han-Ni Chung.
Hi, so I really enjoy the process. I'm teaching face-to-face classes, like 1000 level. So instead of assigning it as a homework, how easy is it to set it up ad hoc so that only students who are captured audience during that time can, be paired up with someone who's in the classroom who they don't know who, and then we have a discussion about it afterwards. So does this require extensive setup on my end before the class, or can that be set up ad hoc?
Yeah, so that is easy to set up very quickly. So I sent a video link on how instructors can set up the assignments. You'll see it just takes a few minutes to set it up. And what you can do is you can lecture for a while in class, or maybe there's a big group discussion. And then if you want to do this in person, then you can set aside maybe a half hour or maybe 40 minutes for the students to talk to each other. And you can just launch the assignment and they'll be able to talk to each other.
I'll just add one thing to that. My favorite implementation that we've seen so far is having students do a Sway Chat before they go into the in-person discussions. Because just having that experience of talking it through and not being able to coast means that they come, first of all, having thought about the first thing that comes into your head, which is often not the best idea you'll ever have. And also just with a bit more confidence, because you've now practiced it. So we've just heard really fantastic feedback about those in-person discussions being greatly improved. Okay, so Rebecca and the people also asked.
These are related questions about the number of people in the group chats. Yes, so by default, we only do one-on-one pairing, so just 2 people for a chat. The main exception, or actually the only exception for the time being, is when there's an odd number of students, and then we make one trio. But we don't currently create groups of more than 3 students, only 2 students or 3 as necessary.
Yeah, and that's, because of our belief that this one-on-one pairing is especially conducive to having these discussions.
Yeah, and as far as avoiding one-on-one conflict, so if you look at the feedback on our website, you'll see a lot of students describe it as being quite a comfortable environment. So you might have thought that many students would find talking about controversial subjects very confrontational, filled with a lot of conflict, and that is really not what we see with college students.
Yeah. Daniel has his hand raised.
Yeah, is there a way to train the guide to know what we're reading in class, and so that the students can refer to our readings and whatnot?
Yeah, so the guide model is a special version that we've built on top of Anthropic's Claude Sonnet model, which has tremendous general knowledge. So most of the time, especially if you're teaching, Shakespeare or something that's well known and a lot of scholarly work on, you won't need to provide any data. We are working on a feature which will allow you to upload the readings from your class so as to ground the guide's responses in the readings. But so far, we actually have found, somewhat to our surprise, that hasn't been necessary.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, because sometimes, a lot of times AI has, quote, read the thing that I'm assigning, but occasionally it hasn't, and then AI goes crazy and makes stuff up and what.
Yep. Okay. Nick, do you want to get the next one?
Oh, yeah. So I see Shira asked, do students always see each other's names in the chat, or is there a way to make their actual names anonymous? So we do ask students to enter a real name, but it doesn't have to be their actual name. We just ask that you enter a real human name as opposed to a screen name like, I don't know, Big Mama 1980 or something like that, which we sometimes had originally when we did our empirical studies, and we said, oh, no, it actually works better when we have real names. But it is semi-anonymous in the sense that a student can enter a pseudonym. That's a good question. Daniel asked what constitutes a real name. I think we operationalize it as not involving special characters.
No numbers unless you're Elon Musk's child, I guess.
This does preserve a lot of anonymity, especially for larger classes. For smaller classes, students could potentially figure out who they are, but they don't have to enter their real names.
I'll just add one thing to that. We have found that almost all students do appear to use their real names. So and some of them do want to be anonymous, but the vast majority of them apparently don't, which was kind of surprising to us as well. Quinton has his hand raised.
Yes, I decided to test the system a little bit while I was in there. And so I said to the person I was talking to, you're having notified, I'm going to test the system now. I said, your opinions seem very fascistic. At which point Guide sent me a message saying, do I want to reword that as maybe authoritarian? And gave me the options of accept, reject, or whatever. In fact, I just deleted that message and posted something else instead. I presume the other person in the room could not see that I had done that because it hadn't gone through. Right.
And actually, Guide also will not remember your first angry message. So you'll get that rephrasing, and then if you accept it, the thing that you originally sent it disappears.
Yeah. I see. Okay.
I see Bronwyn said, I want to avoid the guide pulling information from a site like Reddit or just making things up. So right now, the Guide's not going to pull information from Reddit. In fact, right now, we don't have Guide actively searching the internet for things. And we might enable this at some point in the future, but we restrict it to very specific domains, possibly instructor set domains. But Guide is not currently doing that. As far as just making things up, well, Guide's main purpose isn't to provide facts, but when Guide does provide facts, as it were, Guide will really only cite, very uncontroversial information or data from authoritative sources, maybe the CDC or NASA or leading peer-reviewed journals, Nature, Science. We haven't yet. Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember a case of seeing Guide, to use the jargon, hallucinate on a factual matter. Because first of all, that's not Guide's main point. Guide's main purpose is to help students reason about what they regard as being the facts and help them to dig deeper as to whether those are in fact the facts. But Guide generally won't really dig into the facts unless there's a blatant falsehood that one of the students says, or if the students are really pressing Guide to say, hey, what's at the factual ground level for this issue or for this issue.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so yes, we are officially done at right now, but Simon and I are happy to stick around for more questions, but we won't be offended if you start leaving.
I think Nicole might want to wrap us up, actually.
Yeah. I was basically, I didn't want to interrupt all the Q&A, but yes, we grant you permission to leave if you feel awkward leaving, since we are in a meeting and we can see everyone. But Simon and Nick have done a wonderful job here. They are happy to stay on longer for Q&A. So if you would like to stay on and listen for more Q&A or questions, well, feel free to do that. But please feel free to scroll up to the top to the chat for other links of stuff that HXA is doing. And we hope to see you all next month at our workshop with FIRE, and you can find that information on our website. Simon, Nick, I'll shoot it back to you.
Awesome. Nick, there's tons of questions coming in.
Stuff. I see Bill Leach says CDC LOL. I also say LOL to that.
Yeah. Okay, I see. How does Guide differentiate between gentle reminders and unfair language policing / political correctness? That's a really good topic. So the answer is, so first of all, let's talk about the rephraser that's the main kind of language policing here. So the way that is built is it's a fine-tuned model that is based on data that Nick and I have generated initially ourselves. So we went and found a lot of statements from the internet that people have made in discussions and put our heads together and thought really hard, what is the most charitable possible interpretation of this sentence we found on the internet? We did that hundreds of times and wrote those interpretations and used that to train the model. So the model actually is built on our own intuitions about these things. And I don't know if it's sufficient to say we have very HXA views on these matters. People should be permitted to have these discussions, and language policing should be minimal, but it is somewhat needed.
Yeah, so something that I think Simon was saying earlier in our presentation is that the question we're always asking when someone sends a message is this going to completely derail the conversation? Is it redeemable in any sense? Is it just, kind of rude, impolite, sarcastic, snarky? If that's the case, then yes, it's probably redeemable, and there's going to be a suitable rephrasing for that we could suggest to the user. But if it's using slurs and just mere personal attacks, not focusing on the content, just focusing on you, the person, or making threats, then we don't send those through at all. So basically, we're constantly asking, is it possible in principle to have a discussion if someone wanted to communicate the content of their message? And if the answer is yes, then we either send it through without a rephrasing, or we suggest a rephrasing. If the answer is no, then we just don't send it through at all and don't give any suggestions on how to rephrase it. We just say no. It's just blocked.
Let's go, Peter.
Thank you. Well, first, congratulations. This just seems like a fabulous tool. I'm already thinking about ways I might use it. But my question is, it's sort of it might seem a bit backwards, but you talked about sort of the purpose of the tool being to sort of make available at scale things that were very labor intensive. But I was just curious, in the process of building this, now getting the results as people deploy it, have you learned anything that you would sort of take back to the human moderator? I mean, has it sort of shed any light on instructions you might give a TA or something like that for managing a discussion of a controversial issue?
That's a terrific question.
That's such a good question. I don't have an immediate response to that.
I think I have one.
I'm going to think if you want to start talking, Simon.
Yeah, I mean, so I've read so many of these chat transcripts now. And one thing I've been repeatedly amazed by is how the students sometimes just need the smallest little nudge. Guide is very good about not dominating the discussion. So one thing that sometimes happens is students will ask like, hey, Guide, what do I do now? And
Yeah, I
Guy
was just
gives
thinking
the
that one.
most obvious possible answer in the world. Like, why didn't you respond to the question your partner just asked you? And the student who asked Guy, what do I do now? They go, oh, that's great. And then they just start. Off they go. I'm like, wait, how did they actually need a person, something to tell them that? But one thing I would tell my human TAs is a lot of the time, you don't need to make nearly as much of a contribution as you think you do. You can get out of the way much more. And very often, all the students need is a little bit of encouragement. I think that, yeah, they often imagine they have to do a lot more work than they really do. Nick, did you have a thought on that as well?
You took my main points. I don't really have much to add to that, but that's a question I'm going to think more about, Peter.
Very good one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Lucas.
Hi, thanks. This was asked earlier in the chat, so maybe I just missed your answer. But what do you do when the opinions in the class are just very skewed towards one side of the issue? Yeah. And related to that, you were pairing us up on a whole bunch of different controversial issues. Is that something you advise doing with the class as well? Or just make sure there's a whole bunch of topics for variety's sake?
Yeah. So, okay, go. Nick.
Yeah. So we definitely suggest, as an instructor, to enter multiple topics. Usually, I mean, so the fewer the students you have, the more topics we suggest including. The reason is that, as you were saying, it might be that on one topic there's a skewing of opinions, but it might be that for another topic there's no skewing or less skewing. And so the more topics that you have, the more possibility there is to match students who actually disagree with each other.
And I'll just add one thing. We're using the word topic actually more to mean statement. So you have to provide 3 statements. They can all be, in some sense, on the same topic, but they have to provide genuine, distinct opportunities for disagreement. So we might both agree that abortion is wrong, but you have different views about, what the penalty ought to be for doctors who do. Okay, whatever. We can find opportunities to discuss, and actually by encouraging instructors to provide at least 3. And they often are coming in on the same thing, but from different angles. We've succeeded in having over 95% of students chat with someone who disagreed with them. So even within schools that have pretty seemingly homogenous student bodies, actually there's more than enough, in our experience, more than enough variation in student opinions to get these discussions going.
Yeah, and just to add to that, in cases where nonetheless, we can't pair a student who disagrees with them, then we have a different priority list. So if we can't match them where they disagree with each other, then, well, it might be that the students they enter no opinion for every topic, and then we match students who have no opinion. Sometimes
in that case, we'll lead them through an exploratory discussion.
That's right. And sometimes it'll just turn out to be the case that some students who agree with each other get matched with each other. And in that case, we randomly pick one of the students to play the role of devil's advocate, and then will guide them through the process of playing devil's advocate, which we think is a much more structured way of playing devil's advocate. The research on devil's advocate has been not the most positive, to say the least. And I think this is a completely different type of devil's advocate scenario that has been studied. It's a very small minority of cases of student discussions that have that, but the students who do play devil's advocate, we were worried that they would hate it, but they've mostly liked it.
And I will say, Guide is there to make sure that the devil gets good advocacy. So, you're not going to get into a situation where you sometimes have them going, I can't think of any reason for the
This view is so stupid, I can't think of how can I possibly defend this, and Guide will walk us through.
That doesn't happen, thankfully. Yeah.
And just one more thing, we actually find that the best topic statements to include are ones that students are quite passionate about. And this tends to be statements that might be controversial, or statements where students have a personal interest in it. Statements that are, more abstract, less tied to everyday life or the human experience. It can still facilitate good discussions, but we tend to find the best student responses from the controversial, ones where students are quite passionate about it.
Okay. Let's see. Lucas.
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, okay. I see in the chat, Daniel asked, next steps are at our institution. Can I share Sway? Yes, absolutely. Share it with everyone, with anyone. Yeah, the main site is www.swaybeta.ai. You'll find everything there. How to sign up as an instructor. You'll find a lot more data than what we shared today. You'll see tips for instructors, tips for students. There's an FAQ, the privacy statement, all of that.
Okay, cool. Like, let's say after I do this for a semester, would I be able to, would you mind if I did like a faculty development workshop on it at my own school?
Be terrific.
I wouldn't want to do it right away. I'd want to try it for a semester probably before I did that. Yeah.
And we'll be happy to provide you with figures from your data so you can use them.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks. I'm going to go now, y'all. Thanks.
Okay, thanks so much. Bye.
I just have two questions. The first one is, can instructor get a transcript of all the students' participation in the class, like individual transcript? No. What happens if a student come to me afterwards and complain and I won't be able to verify?
Well, the students are free to take screenshots or copy and paste that. So they can do that if they want. We're considering implementing a feature which would allow them to export the chat as a PDF. So it makes it possible. Yeah, the students, so that it would be in their hands if they wish to submit it to you, perhaps through your LMS. But right now we're remaining pretty strict that we can give you some really deep insight without having to violate student privacy.
Okay. The second question follow-up to that is, if a student was consistently inflammatory, let's say, will that be flagged to the instructor? So if they were just constantly throwing out stuff that were inflammatory or borderline inflammatory, right? Will we be flagged and let known? Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're not currently doing that. In fact, I mean, we do monitor the stats of how often students are being inflammatory. We shared some of the stats earlier, and we haven't yet seen this happening yet with a student being consistently inflammatory. But that's a good idea. That's something we can include in the instructor report as well. Whether some students, well, I don't know if we can do it individually, but
I will say one thing that just doesn't happen. Often, if a student is being deeply uncooperative and they just won't finish the chat, the partner doesn't continue. So they'll probably write to you and say, I don't want to keep having this chat. And if I was the instructor, I would say, I understand, you can do a makeup or something like that. But yeah, so far, we haven't seen it happen. Like I said, the students behave nothing like they do on social media.
So we were also talking about LMS just before. There was a question about whether it integrates with Canvas or other online platforms. Not currently. We do plan to do that in the future.
We currently have got a work around though. So Canvas will allow you to upload a CSV file. And as long as it matches your students' email addresses, that will let you add the completion statistics into your Canvas or Blackboard. But if you want to talk to us, just send an email. We'll be happy to talk about that.
But also, I just want to say, I mean, so our team is quite limited at the moment. So if you know of other, potential funders who'd like to help us out, that's actually something that we'd love to do. We would love to integrate Sway into Canvas, Blackboard, other LMSs. And so if you happen to know of a potential funding source that would be happy to help us, we'd love that. And, just had to put the word out about that.
Jennifer. And then Rebecca.
I was just curious if it's possible to pair up outside of your class, like if you can pair up with someone at a different institution or someone else at the same institution in a different class.
Mm-hmm. So we currently have 2 instructors at different institutions who decided to merge their classes together because one of them was quite a small class and was at a very liberal leaning institution. The other was much larger and a more mixed up institution. And so they're sort of co-teaching and using Sway together. But we haven't provided a kind of generic pool where you can just send your students, although we're certainly thinking about it. And I'd be curious to know if that's a feature that you would like, or if other people here would like to be able to do that. But right now, it is just matching with students in your class, or if the instructor chooses to collaborate with another instructor, then across multiple classes.
Thank you.
Rebecca.
So a question and a comment. The question is, do the online resources include the information about CSV files and how to set that up, or would we have to talk to one of you?
Currently, I don't believe we have it in the FAQ, but thank you for reminding us. So I'll make sure that's updated promptly. But in the meantime, if you have any questions at all, just send me a short email. Send us we'll get back to you real quick.
Okay. And is your email in the chat here somewhere? I joined late.
I will make sure it is.
Thanks. And then my comment is I just wanted to draw attention to my response to Hans like way back because I do teach a critical thinking course where we do discuss controversial topics. And I start my students out with Constructive Dialogue Institute's Perspectives program. We do it in like 3 weeks, but like it gives students the tools to be able to talk to each other across differences. So I think for people, you know, who are doing that, maybe check out that link to Constructive Dialogue Institute and take a look at that. And I was kind of wondering if that could, that kind of instruction is or could be integrated into the guide. Like it seems like it does a good job already of saying, hey, you seem to be using sarcasm instead of responding. That was to my
Best
partner.
idea. Yeah. So first of all, the CDI, we love the perspectives course, and I actually think that Sway is a beautiful complement to it, because while it has, the perspectives course has tremendous information, really useful stuff about the psychology and cognitive science and all the other stuff of constructive disagreement, it doesn't really have anything like Sway, which lets the students go and get that guided practice. So I kind of actually just think they're a perfect pairing. Give the students the background intellectually, but don't stop there. They need to practice. Constructive disagreement is like any other skill. You don't learn it through osmosis. So I think that we're actually a really good pairing. We don't really want to compete with CDI or any of these other organizations.
Yeah, just also give another shout out to Unify America. They do a fantastic job too. They match students who disagree politically into video chats with each other.
Yeah, and those are across campuses, across the nation. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I think we're all doing, you know, we all have similar goals, but we take different approaches. But yeah, we think very highly of both CDI and Unify America.
Thanks for mentioning that. I wasn't aware of it. I just looked it up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Unify America is just a wonderful organization, and definitely check them out. They're doing great work.
Okay, so question, are there fees for using this? Are there sample syllabi we can see? There are no fees. No, so this is entirely free for educators. We're funded through various grants. I was mentioning before, we'd love to get more grants so we can build new things, but it's entirely free. Are there sample syllabi? Of course, of course. Are there sample syllabi you can see? Well, we do, on the website, we do language. We have language that you can use on your syllabus for introducing.
I was asked those questions. I was just interested in how faculty integrated into the session, like if they use it regularly, weekly, once or twice, and then what kind of credit they give, how much they assign for the portion of the course grade.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I see.
So this is the syllabus language that we offer as a model, but we don't specify that. I will say, I think you should give students multiple opportunities. A lot of instructors have they plan to do it one-off and then they get the great feedback and continue.
No, you'd have to do it regularly, I would think.
I think to get any, really, and if you're interested in, I think, we want to make these discussions amazing in and of themselves.
Right.
We want to take those skills out into the real world and off of Sway. I just think there's no way around it. They need to get a lot of practice in, and this is an amazing way for them to do that.
Here's, could I clarify again? So we will know if the student participated, and they only count as participating if they really engage in some sort of dialogue. If they leave or write, what if they just keep typing in something that makes no sense? Are they counted as participating?
So in order to participate, to be counted as participating, they'd need to be having
okay, that's what I wanted to be sure.
That will not work for them. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's actually part of how we calculate progress percentage for an assignment. There are various factors as well. I won't bore you with the statistical.
No, I'm just wondering if there's a way to cheat the system for the students.
So far, no.
Good. I'm glad you,
Terry.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, I want to add one other thing. Students can't cheat with ChatGPT on this thing. And the reason for that is because we've disabled copy paste. So we have a bunch of layers.
Oh, wonderful. Oh.
Yeah. So when we first started doing this, we were seeing some of the more lazy ones to get chat to do the chatting for them. So we haven't seen that in nearly a year. Because now in order to use chat, you'd have to type.
Yeah.
And that's just more work than actually participating.
Right, exactly.
Have a chat.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Okay, Terry.
I wasn't able to participate in the demo because I got blocked by Cisco. And I think that's my university just got an enterprise license for ChatGPT. So I'm wondering, I'm guessing that's why. I'm wondering if this would be available with ChatGPT or another AI in the
It should
future.
not interact.
It's limited to
It should
Claude.
not interact. Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, Terry, we'll look into what happened. This is quite unusual. But yeah, Sway is completely different from ChatGPT. It doesn't, it's not just a way of engaging with ChatGPT. We use a lot of different AI models, including some of OpenAI's models that we fine-tuned ourselves, OpenAI being the company that makes ChatGPT. We also use some Anthropic models. So it's not like we're just connecting it with ChatGPT, but we will definitely look into this. Yeah. Thank you
So
for telling us.
Sally Mikhail asks, is there a minimum class size to use this? I only have 20 students or less. 20 students is more than enough. We've had classes of half that size using Sway. The only thing I would say is when you do that, it's a little bit more work for you as an instructor because I'd want you to provide like at least 5 statements. But you could even provide a few more and then you'll see the statistics. So you'll know where you're getting matches and where you're not. But yeah, if you have a small class, absolutely, you can still do this. And if you have more questions about small classes, definitely just drop me an email. I'll be very happy to chat about that. And I maybe even can put you in touch with an instructor who, if they're open to it.
I see Terry also asked, do students retain partners or change partners from one discussion to the next? We don't, normally they'll be different partners. So basically what we do is for each discussion assignment, we prioritize matches with students who disagree with you. And among students who disagree, we try to find students who disagree with you the most.
Strongly.
For example, if you said strongly disagree about one topic statement and another student said strongly, the other one, I forgot what I said.
Strongly agree. Yeah, that would be a...
Yeah, that match will be prioritized over a match of slightly agree and slightly disagree. So if you have a lot of students, it's unlikely for them to be matched again, but it's possible and somewhat random.
Yeah. Okay. Terry had a follow-up there, and then we'll go to Rebecca. Okay, we'll go to Rebecca.
Yeah, so I was curious about that level of agreement thing because when my conversation started, the guide just said, Rebecca agrees and the other person disagrees. But I think my agreement was like a slightly agree. And so it didn't seem like it got calibrated in that way. And I think that was part of the reason that my partner was kind of hostile and didn't stick
Well,
with
one
it.
of the things students often start off by saying is, I only slightly agree, or I only slightly disagree. And sometimes if I'm interested enough, I'll go and have a look and check if they're lying, and they often are. So the story for why we even announce just the broad, you're on this side and you're on that side, is because we discovered in our empirical studies that human beings are so agreeable that they answer a survey, literally 3 seconds later, they go and lie about their opinion. They're like, oh, I must have clicked the wrong button. No, you didn't. That does not happen.
Why polling is so bad.
It's happening like 20%.
So that's why we announce so-and-so agrees, so-and-so disagrees. And you're right. If the people who strongly disagree or strongly agree, they probably appreciate that we didn't use the adverb to modify it. The people who say slightly, they want us to, so we can't make everyone happy, so we just go in the middle.
My other question was about Sally. Maybe I missed the response to this, but she had asked if it's possible to pair all the students with guide as their conversation partner. Is that a thing?
No. So no, very much not. The only time a student will get paired with guide, like Nick mentioned, is when they're abandoned by their human partner and the deadline is approaching.
Yeah, and the reason we do this is we really care about facilitating student discussion, not student AI discussion. The AI is there. Actually, there's a phrase that we like to use sometimes. We didn't come up with it. Maybe some of you have heard it, but we think of guide not as the sage on the stage, but the guide on the side. So it's helpful.
Why you named it that way.
What's that?
That's why you named it that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so we really want to help students develop the skill of engaging in constructive disagreement with each other, not with an AI.
And I'll just add one thing to that. Students are kind of over chatbots. That's not highly engaging. The possibility of having a profound rational conversation with another student who you disagree with about a topic that's really hard to discuss, that is engaging. That is something to come back for. Interacting with an AI, in and of itself isn't really that exciting. So that's why we really...
I was kind of thinking of it as like a practice round, right? Like where you take a position and then you practice the conversation with the AI instead of with a human being. Because this is based on the fact that I had like a bad experience with this demo. And Guy didn't start interacting with me because it was giving us all that time. So I don't know. I was just curious about that.
Rebecca, can I put this link in the chat, me.swaybeta.ai.
Yeah.
And that
I clicked it. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, you can. So the reason this is our public facing offering, it just lets you talk about any topic with a person you can invite. You just generate a link and share it with anyone. The reason we made it was because at the end of workshops like this one, inevitably people would come up to us and be like, can I use this with my husband? Or can I use this with my wife? And so it turns out a lot of people, disagreement is a pain point. So you can go on to me.swaybeta and have a much better experience.
It's a pain point, but it's also the source of so much, so much education, so much knowledge, so much understanding. It's a pain point, but it's also a point for potential growth.
Yeah. Okay, Elizabeth Spivak.
Yes. As a canceled academic, one who was canceled for a survey question that was somewhat provocative, I worry that students are looking for something to complain about, that even the questions that would be designed purposely to reveal or create, falsely create some kind of disagreement would be enough to get a complaint lodged against a faculty member or another student, and especially if they can take screenshots and post things out of context, which is exactly what happened, to me and my students. There's basically no coming back from that. And so I just wondered if you've thought about that, if you've had any experience with that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. And that's an awful thing to happen for a survey question. So the short, I think when I was teaching dangerous ideas, I tried to estimate what fraction of the students took the class with the sole aim of trying to get me fired. And I thought in the end, it was about 1 in 50 to 1 in 100 students who were basically there to try and get me in trouble. In a way, you want to just have a classroom which is only those students because they're the ones who need the most help. But Sway can't solve that problem, unfortunately. So if there are students in there who want to try and get other people cancelled or in trouble, of course they can try. But I think those are problems that have to be addressed through systematic changes in the administration of the university, and not really something which we can do directly, unfortunately. But I will also say, just encouragingly, thousands of students have used Sway, and we've never seen anything like that. Nothing like it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So it hasn't happened yet, and maybe, and we may be beyond. We may be getting beyond that. Fingers crossed.
Let us all hope. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, Nick, do you want to?
I see Terry asked, can we share the recording of the session with colleagues who are not members of HXA? That's a question for Nicole and Marissa. Yeah. But if the answer is no to that, we do have other things that we can share. Simon and I have been on some podcasts recently where we've talked about Sway and shared some really cool
and also the Heterodox Out Loud podcast. Although
of course. Yeah, I was just going to mention that.
Yeah. But our Wondrous podcast, Nick, do you want to drop the link to that?
Yeah, let me find that.
That's a good one. And then on our website, we've got like 10-minute demo video. And I can also share, if you drop me an email, I can share like recordings of what other talks that we've given if this one isn't available. Yeah, and happy to do that as well. Just get in touch. Okay. Yeah, so here's a question. Looking at the sample syllabus on our website, do we recommend that for required assignments, students do it outside of class? So I can tell you my views on this. My view is that when students are actually in a room together in the same room and they can open the hole in their face and talk and listen, they should probably not spend that time on a screen. So I prefer to make that an asynchronous part of the class that just sort of travels along like a discussion section, but they still have, when they are in person, an in-person discussion. I will say Abigail Segui, who was at both our initial guinea pig, but then she came back for more and did one of her small seminars recently. Actually, we have a link to a Spectrum News report on her class. Nick, maybe you can drop that in the chat. But what she was doing was fantastic. So she was teaching, and again, very difficult to discuss topics surrounding gender. And she would make the first part of the seminar a 25 or 30-minute sway chat. And so you're talking to someone else in the room who you might not know who. Then all the laptops close, and then we go into the opening the holes in the face and talking. That, she said, was a terrific approach. It wasn't something I would have naturally thought of doing, but seemed to work really well for her.
Okay, I know there are a bunch of questions in the chat. I think we got through a lot of them. It's possible we missed a few of them. So if we missed any of them, feel free to repeat it.
I just have a question about, so like I teach at a community college, and, we have a lot of people who are financially challenged. They don't all have laptops, so it's not that I could just ask them to bring laptops to class. Some of them have Chromebooks, and I think the college offers like Chromebook loans here and there. But I've noticed that with Canvas, my students can't upload essays to Canvas from a Chromebook. So are there any devices that Sway doesn't play nicely with?
That breaks my heart to hear. That's so bad and stupid and wrong. I can't believe it. Okay, anyway, no. Sway will work with basically any device that was made in the last 10 years. Phone, tablet, laptop, desktop. It's very lightweight. It's all based in the web browser. So it will work perfectly on Chromebook.
They all have phones, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Any others we can get? Or I think maybe it's almost time to call it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and thank you so much for staying on, Simon and Nick. I know everyone really appreciates it. So I think you guys all have their email, so I'm sure they welcome any further questions or emails. So thanks everyone.
Everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much to us.
Thanks. Take care.